So I will go ahead and take your question first, but I've been told that we need to make sure we pass around the microphones. So please, if you could stand up, introduce yourself, so your name, the organization who you work for, and then your question, but please make sure you have a microphone in hand before you do so.
And for efficiency, let's do 3 questions at a time.
Absolutely. So, somebody.
Go ahead. Fill it in.
My name is Pravin Banker. I'm the chairman of African Medical Investments. We have a footprint in Zimbabwe, and I was just there in Zimbabwe late August, early September. I spent a week there, went around Harare, Bulawayo, Victoria Falls. Now, we are planning to launch a healthcare fund, and Zimbabwe would be our initial base, but we will cover the Zambezi River countries. Okay. You raised a very important central issue. My experience in the week that I was there is that the country has no dollars at all. And it survives on an ingenious system of debit cards and a wallet system. I myself used a debit card, a Barclays debit card. Now when I settled at the end, the dollars that you mentioned, the local debt, 6 billion, it was settled, my particular case was settled at 1.85. So why wouldn't the 6 billion be settled at 1.85 to lop off 3 billion in debt?
Okay. Excellent question. So we'll take 2 more questions and then we'll go through all of them at once. So we have 2 questions right here in the front.
I think I have the mic.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tendai Kapidze. I'm chief economist here in New York at Lending Tree, but just here in my personal capacity as a citizen of Zimbabwe. Question for the Minister of Finance. Earlier this year, there was an announcement that Zimbabwe would be selling off a lot of the state-owned enterprises. And I think the enterprise values of those enterprises is around 14 or 15 billion. I guess what progress has been made and what are your next milestones? And just to put that in terms of the broader economic questions in Zimbabwe, when I was there in April, probably the only sector that has seen real development and that works efficiently is the telecom cell phone sector. And that has the benefit of having a strong private competitor to the state-owned enterprises. So what's the plan with the state-owned enterprises? How do we privatize those to create greater efficiency in other sectors of the economy? Thank you.
And right here in the front as well.
My name is Daniel McConvey. I'm with Rossport Investments. We're a mining fund here in downtown New York. And we've been investors in Zimbabwe off and on over the last 10 or 15 years. Mr. President, honorable ministers, and Governor, you have a challenge in mining investing because of the capital intensity. And a lot of investors, including myself, have had the threat of higher taxes or something else wrong with a partner for years. And it's really, life's too short for a lot of us to live through this. And I know the government's changed, but if you're going to get the capital investment, you're going to have to try to find an extra way to provide the security of that investment and the ability of getting that money out, short term or medium term or longer term. And how can you do that? And one thing that comes to mind is maybe having a stabilization agreement for 5 or 10 years where they can live through, the company knows with higher certainty the tax rate's not going to change, the tenures are not going to change, the rules are not going to change. Is that something you would consider? And just another point now, Tanzania right now we're going through another thing where the rules are changing, and that makes a lot of investors nervous about African countries, and that's one of the challenges too, just in the region. Thank you.
Okay, so I will start by addressing your question, but I think ultimately it's probably a better question for the Reserve Bank Governor. To your question, why is it not settled at 1.85? To be honest, I can't answer that. The reason that that's not something that I think has gotten as much attention as you might think is because generally people such as the IMF, the World Bank, sort of international economists don't tend to worry about domestic debt to the same degree that they worry about external debt for a variety of reasons. One, external debt obviously can't be rebased. It's owed in dollars. We know the terms. Obviously, those terms can change under certain conditions, that being the Paris Club or maturity extensions, et cetera. But in terms of the domestic debt, regardless of the currency, the country always maintains sovereign immunity. So there are ways that you can reduce debt stock. That typically, if the debt is denominated in local currency, through seniorage, you can inflate away that debt stock. So we tend to not think about it in sort of as significant of terms. Now, the Zimbabwe example is a little bit different because it's obviously still dollarized and you don't have that ability. That being said, through tax policy, monetary policy, banking law, et cetera, there are ways that you can reduce the liability. Now, you can either just repay it at 1.85, which would basically reduce the total liability by about 45%, or you could repay it in full, but through tax policy, change those laws so you basically tax back any of those earnings or the principal repayment. So I'm not saying that that is the situation in Zimbabwe or what should be done going forward, but as a result, that's one of the reasons why domestic debt tends not to be considered to sort of the same degree as external debt. But sort of in regards to the specifics of how that repayment might work, I think I'll pass it over to the governor.
Thank you very much, Chris, also for the explanation. Let me just explain what I was referring to. Is that we've got electronic dollars and we've got the real dollars. That's what I was referring to. And that within the RTGS dollars, which is electronic dollars, you're converting 1 to 185. That's what I was referring to. Now, that is not the official position of government. Number two is that if you have that haircut for all the debt of Zimbabwe, it means that, as I said earlier, it means that you are devaluing people's investors' funds in the country. Basically, you are eroding value. It might have a far-reaching consequences in the economy, because it means that the pricing regime will need to change to follow the same pattern. And hence, that what you might have is something that the consequences or the unintended consequences are far-reaching than a simple haircut on the debt of Zimbabwe. Yes, our vision is to become a cash-light society, where you use your plastic money, you use your internet banking, you use your mobile banking platforms, just what you do in America. You use your credit cards much more than cash. The problem in Zimbabwe, just like in Africa, is that we use cash more predominantly than cards. If you use credit cards, if you use cards in Zimbabwe, mobile bank cards, or the internet banking, there will be less pressure in the banking sector for the cash. Then you can preserve the cash for imports purposes. If you look, for example, in the gold, we pay our artisan miners 70% cash, as opposed to pay them more in electronic money. Even here in America, where there is a GDP of more than about $19 trillion, not all of that one is cash backed. Your banks, your deposits are about 14 trillion, but the banks don't have $14 trillion in cash. You've got about $1.3 trillion in cash, which is 10% of the deposit base. Yes, yet in a country like Zimbabwe, you want to match the bank deposit to cash. It never happened in anywhere anywhere in the world, even China, where there are 1.3 billion people. So we are praying for a culture change, whereby people understand that money is not cash, but that cash is part of money. That's what we are talking about. So in any case, what we are referring to, your card, I think it was more of you using the card in the local debt, but in terms of settlement, all cross-border payments are one-to-one. That's what we do in Zimbabwe. But we have taken note of your concern, and the way to do it is to increase the supply of foreign currency, of dollars, and to reduce the genesis of money creation in Zimbabwe. Thank you.
To add to making further announcements around those arrangements in monetary policy at the end of the month when the governor presents the monetary policy statement. Also hasten to say that, you know, the trend in terms of the use of mobile banking is not just unique to Zimbabwe. A lot of other countries are doing that. Kenya has been the leader for a while. Zimbabwe has caught up, you know, very quickly, because also it was a solution for liquidity problems. We have Ivory Coast, we have Uganda, we have Tanzania. So this is not unique to Zimbabwe. Come to the question of privatization. You said what? Fadzai, you said? Tendai. Yes, what we've done an exercise as government and categorize the various state-owned enterprise, the SOEs, into obviously those that are privatizable, if I can create a new word, and those that can be restructured, and those that can be basically liquidated because they're just not viable. We've done that categorization already, but we know the cross-cutting issues, regardless of category, is issues about strengthening management, governance, the strategies of various SOEs. We've done all of that exercise. Some of them are already further ahead in terms of those that are privatizable, engaging potential investors and advisors to just make it happen and do that. You mentioned the telecom sector. That's an easy one. You know, companies such as Net1 and so forth, Telecel, those are easily privatizable. You'll see a lot more happen in terms of privatization going forward. Of course, those that are not privatizable, but are marginal, don't fall into, let's say, the liquidation category. We have to think of ways of sorting out their debt, cleaning up the balance sheet. I mean, there's so many ideas. These are just ideas. You could even create a kind of bad bank where those loans are, or rather the debt is put in a special purpose vehicle from a bad bank, clean up the balance sheet, but make sure that the company still continues to service the interest on that on the SPV where the debt is held. So many ideas that we can do. We're looking at all of those, and I think we'll make an announcement as we progress on that part. Now, there's a question also on what I think is basically was policy volatility about mining, where you say, look, we are basically saying, look, we need policy consistency. We cannot invest if there's policy volatility. That's what we're here to deliver. That's what the new dispensation in Zimbabwe is here to deliver. Often policy volatility comes from policy volatility on the fiscal front. And since I supervise the fiscal front, I'm determined that there should not be fiscal volatility in that regard. And then what we see us do is adopt basically a kind of 3-year forward-looking budgetary process where we have an idea in some sense as to where the budget deficit is headed over a 3-year period and provide that policy settlement and less volatility. Some of the volatility may be regulatory by the way, and again make sure that there's no reversals that may harm your business. But also there are no reversals on the fiscal regime for the mining sector, where there's royalties, where there's the corporate tax interaction, and other levels. There's some consistency. We're determined to deliver that. We're aware that this has been a challenge in the past.
So we'll go ahead and take 3 more questions. One right here, one in the doorway, and maybe something from the right-hand side of the room. There we go, right there in the middle.
Yeah, mine is more of a compliment than a question. My name is Nathan. I come from Johannesburg. I've watched Zimbabwe for the last 20 years, and I know its potential. The question I wanted to ask to the panel, why can't you set up a sovereign wealth fund for Zimbabwe? I think there are plenty of people that are willing to invest. I'll be the first one to invest as an African. We shouldn't be going to the world with a begging bowl. I see all our airports are always busy. All the hotels are always busy. Yet when it comes to making an investment in the sovereign state, we don't do it, Thanks, man.
We have a question in the doorway.
Sure.
If we could, can we?
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Nana Minya Ayensu. I work for General Electric. So first of all, thank you all very much for coming today. Just wanted to ask a little bit to the extent to which you all cover your energy sector. I know as of last year, you were looking to develop a new framework around trying to develop a framework around independent power production and so on in the area, and also as part of your national energy policy to help promote the development of renewables and other types of energy. And I think you all alluded to it in your opening remarks. I'm just wondering if you could provide a bit of an update on what kinds of policies and structures that you're all putting in place to encourage the safe development of power projects and so on in the area.
Third question is Patrick Chidley here with 3PPB. We're a mining advisor based here in the States. We've got some interest in Zimbabwe at the moment. So my question is just a monetary policy question, just really to ask, what's the scope for raising interest rates in dollars in Zimbabwe, and would that be something to help bring money in the country?
If I could start on the question of the sovereign wealth fund. Zimbabwe has a sovereign wealth fund, but it's been growing slowly. It was launched in 2015. And obviously the sovereign wealth fund is a mechanism for dealing with intergenerational equity, as you know, to make sure that the resources that are being extracted now, some of those benefits can also be transferred to future generations. Either in the form of investment or in the form of infrastructure specifically. So we have the fund. So I think you will see us begin to put more capital into it from royalties and other sources of revenue for the government. I think this is very important. So we will be doing that. It exists. It just hasn't moved fast enough in terms of growth, but it's going to happen. And I think really the ideal asset allocation will be investment in infrastructure, and then some investments in stable liquid assets. And then the third is to support the recurrent expenditure in terms of the budget. That is a normal asset allocation. If you check, for instance, the sovereign wealth fund in Botswana, for example, or Algeria, that is how it is structured. So over time, that's the asset allocation that we're going to put in place. But we have it already. We'll see it grow.
Thank you. The last question, which was mainly on the why not raising the US dollar rates in Zimbabwe so as to attract dollar flow. Brilliant question. That's one of the issues that we'll be working on our monetary policy measures. Because bearing in mind that right now the electronic dollars are commingling with the real dollars. And therefore, it means that we want to put some policy measures that talks to what you are saying, but at the same time, that talks to non-commingling of the two. Thank you. I hope I make sense to yeah, thank you.
And then we have one more question about energy generation capacity, transmission and distribution across the country.
Absolutely, as a country, we need more generation capacity. Absolutely. So we now have a window where independent power producers can be active in the market. That has been opened up, and you can link into the transmission platform and then sell electricity. There's no impediment at all. We're looking forward to seeing you in Zimbabwe. We already have a few who have gotten their licenses, their PC contracts in place. So that's open.
So I think we'll do three more questions.
Just
on that one, may I say a day or two just before we came here, I had discussions with a company from California. There's technology now in the United States which is new on the continent. In the past, if you want thermal power, you go where the coal is, produce it, and then transmit the energy to where it is required. If you are using hydro, You go to the river or dam where it is produced and then transmit it where it is required. But there is now a company that's about 10, 12 years old in California, United States, which produces the energy through lithium battery mechanism or technology on site, and are very eager to do the same. And we're in the middle of negotiations for first phase 2,000 megawatts, second phase up to 8,000 megawatts, but produced on site. It's very exciting.
Very exciting indeed. But also we have got the methane gas. So again, you could use that resource for producing power in addition to the lithium and the coal and the hydro. But also sunshine in terms of solar produced power. So many options.
So in the sake of time, I think we'll take 3 more questions. We have one right here in the front, one in the middle of the room, and the final question back there.
Yeah, my name's Paul Hinks. I'm the chief executive of an energy company, a power company called Zimbabwe Power. We're interested in investing in Zimbabwe. But I'm also the chairman of a members association group called Invest Africa in the United States. We had the pleasure of visiting Zimbabwe about a month or so before the election, and we were hosted by His Excellency, and it was a fantastic event. We were 22 people, and I can tell you, Your Excellency, that every single person that left after that visit was extremely positive, and they're already talking about doing real investments in the country. But what I wanted to do is to bring up something that no one's talked about, which is a difficult one, because we're in America. This sanctions. Okay, so we have the sanctions, and because we went to Zimbabwe a month or so before the election, we all followed, and I followed personally, the election process. It was difficult, no doubt. So are many in Africa, frankly, so are many in the world. This wasn't so great here. And what's happened since is during that process and thereafter, there are quite a lot of groups, particularly in Washington, of course, lobby groups, who were supporting your opponents. And they're still supporting your opponents. And what's been happening is that many of the good things, which I get, because I get this News 24 from South Africa and Zimbabwe and things like that, I read it. So I have seen the good things, the way you reacted to the Tendai BT issue, the statements you made about international investigators coming in to look at the violence that occurred. That story of the good things you've said is not getting out in Washington. Only the negatives is getting out in Washington. And so it's important. I'm playing the role I can, and for example, I have a meeting in 2 weeks' time with the head of OFAC. And we've retained some specialist sanctions lawyers. But many of us are trying to get through to people on Capitol Hill and in the White House that these sanctions are not fair and they have to be dropped. And what we're hearing is that there are some senators, including people like Jeff Flake, who was in Zimbabwe during the election itself, Chris Coons. There are some people that have moderated their views and really are not feeling like punishing the people of Zimbabwe over what happened during the elections. So my only, as I say, it's not a question so much as an advice or something to point out, but the more you can do to help in DC, I'm sitting next to the ambassador here, so I should be addressing the ambassador, to help in DC, I think those sanctions will go. But it needs a big effort from the Zimbabwe government and all the supporters of Zimbabwe so that we can get on and do business in the country that's open for business.
So maybe not so much an answer, but a sort of reaction to the comments, which I think a lot of us would be very interested in hearing. Then we have one more question in the middle of the room.
My name is Deborah Nyasha Peters. I actually live in Zimbabwe. I'm a fund manager. I spent 8 years here in New York, on Wall Street. Then I went to South Africa, project finance for ESCOM. And then I went to Nigeria, running a PE fund in real estate. So now I'm back in Zimbabwe 5 years. First of all, I have the dubious honor of having run for elections for local government in Ward 7 in the last election. I was an independent. I did not win, but
I was going to ask about that.
yeah, but State House is in my ward, so you were under my my area. So my question is.
Watch out, your electorate is here.
Yes. My question is about the Zimbabwe Investment Authority, because I still have my clients in West Africa, in Ghana, and we're competing against the likes of Rwanda, where you can open a company, a business quickly. Zimbabwe is still very bureaucratic. Zimbabwe Investment Authority is not very good at articulating the merits of the country as an investment destination. And there's talk about setting up a Zimbabwe Investment Development Authority, ZIDA. I hope that ZIDA would not be ZIA, the old authority just rehashed and given a new name, because we really need some help in that area. I have lots of investors coming to ask questions, trying to get things done, and they always have to go through all this bureaucracy.
And then we have the final question over here on the right-hand side of the room.
Hi there. My name is Steve. I'm with Consilience Capital. I work with several families who own some of the largest companies, agricultural concerns in Africa. Everybody's looking at Zimbabwe. Everybody wants to invest in the agricultural sector. And I hear you guys talk about you guys want investment, but not once did you guys mention any strategy for the agriculture. You guys talk about your tobacco sector. I mean, have you guys talked to JTI or Altria or someone and say, look, you know, we don't want to export blends anymore. We just want you guys to produce it here. You know, is there a strategy to bring direct investment into the country? It seems like it's actually missing. You guys haven't mentioned it once. You guys say come here and invest, but you know, if you guys have, you know, if you guys have an oligopoly of tobacco, it just seems kind of, you know, like a natural sector. So, you know, I look at Zimbabwe because it's, you know, doesn't have port facilities. It's more like a Botswana, and you know, Botswana, the only way that they're kind of getting ahead is they're putting value added. I mean, even if you just look at the diamond sector, just polishing out diamonds adds so much more to the economy. You know, something like tobacco should be that strategy. And I represent, I'm more in line with the sugar industry, but I'm just thinking out loud. You know, you guys are painting very broad strokes here. Do you guys have anything that is more of a direct attack on drawing major investment into value-added sectors?
So I think what we'll do is we'll actually address these questions in reverse order. That way, His Excellency can address the issue about sanctions last. I think that'll probably be an excellent point to end on. So, if you want to.
Let me deal with the question on that one from Nyasha Peters. Sorry you lost your action, but try again next time. ZANU-PF was a lot stronger, is it? Now, I didn't even attempt, so at least you tried. I agree with you that with so much competition in terms of attracting investment, and the new Zimbabwe Investment Authority needs to be efficient, needs to act quickly and realize that it is in competition with other countries, Rwanda, Ghana, to mention a few. I can only agree with you that it should be efficient, it should realize it is in competition and just deliver value for investors and really become a one-stop shop. It is our intention to make it so. I can assure that I repeat, it is our intention to make it so.
Thank you. the last question on value addition. Definitely, Zimbabwe's policy is to increase value addition on its products. That relates not only to mining and other sectors, manufacturing, but also agriculture. By looking at the high-tech type of agriculture, Zimbabwe used to export almost number one, I think, in Africa in terms of horticulture. We want to beneficiate, we want to increase, we want to go back way before. Yes, if you talk of tobacco, the idea is to add value, make cigarettes. And therefore, Zimbabwe is open for business for those companies that want to beneficiate the tobacco to produce cigarettes. So at the end of the day, we add value to our tobacco. And that we add value even to maize. We used to produce maize oil from maize. And soya bean, we produce both the stock feeds and the cooking oil. So yes, you are very right. That whilst we don't speak much about it, but that's government policy to add value to the agricultural sector, to have a high tech, to have more drip irrigation, which minimizes water as we go into these climatic changes. So yes, you are spot on. And I think what you are saying resonates very well with what you are doing. Let me end by saying that Zimbabwe is a frontier market. Investing in Zimbabwe, it is a must, because that is why everything can happen. The good soils for blueberries, for even things like the mangoes, which are very good, oranges, sugarcane. Yes, we need also value adding from art. Maybe that way in sugar, because if you look at Zimbabwe in the southern region, we have got places where we are producing plenty of sugar. We need to add value in the sugar, from the raw sugar to sugar itself to ethanol, which you can also use for blending the fuel, which we're currently doing. So yes, there's plenty of value for value addition in agriculture. Thank you very much.
But have you targeted strategic partners for such things, or are you just saying we're open for business? Have you contacted strategic partners?
Yeah, we'll be very happy to discuss with you those strategic partners that are there as we do a bilateral discussion. Because obviously we also need pointers. That's one reason why we are here, to get all those pointers and areas where we can also improve. We are improvement is our goal, to show that we keep on improving. Thank you very much.
And now the final question for His Excellency, the issue of sanctions, also the PR story. Why in Washington, New York, London, etc., do we only hear the bad side of what's happening in Zimbabwe, and we frequently miss the positives that are actually happening on the ground?
Well, thank you very much. Before I tackle the sanctions issue, I would like to add small point in relation to Nyasha's concerns. There has been perception on Zimbabwe for nearly 2 decades as an isolated, bad country with inconsistent policies, governance, rule of law, human rights, all negative perception was existent with regard to Zimbabwe. But since the new dispensation, we're trying to clear that air. And we invite people left, right, and center to come to Zimbabwe for themselves, people to experience what actually Zimbabwe is. This is why my brother here says, when Senator Jeff Flake, Kuhn, and that delegation, when they came there, they're very negative. But when they left, they were our ambassadors. Just because they were able to look at the concrete situation on the ground, not the perception that is pervaded across the world by media and so on. So we invite those who think Zimbabwe is not a good destination for investment to come to Zimbabwe physically and experience the atmosphere and environment in our country. You have talked about the ease of doing business. Yes, when we had our meeting in March in Kigali, that's Rwanda, I met President Kagame, and to interest myself as to how he achieved what he has now, the environment in Kigali. I had a long discussion, and in the end, he sent me a team led by the lady who is head of the, what do you call it? Rwanda Investment Board, Clara somebody. And they came to Zimbabwe, spent a week with mayor officials as well as government ministers in Zimbabwe. One example is that in the past we used to take about 2 to 3 months to register a company in Zimbabwe. Now we are down to 2 days maximum. We have experiences of doing it within a day now, as a result of removing all the archaic legislation and procedures that are necessary to achieve the ease of doing business and the cost of doing business. And a lot is being done in terms of reforms in that area so that we become competitive. So I just wanted to add to what my new minister has said about in reply to your question. Now, with regard to sanctions, initially sanctions, the quarrel was not between the people of the United States of America and the people of Zimbabwe. The quarrel was between Zimbabwe and the United Kingdom. It was a bilateral quarrel. But the British were able to internationalize our bilateral quarrel between ourselves and them, which robbed in the EU. And in the end, it robbed in the Americans through the former President Bush. And in Britain, there was Tony Blair. But I'm happy now we have a lady. You know, when we got our independence in 1980, or 1979, there was a very serious war in Zimbabwe against Ian Smith. But there was a change of government in the United Kingdom, and Margaret Thatcher came to power. She was the person who ended our war. So anything, each time there's a lady in Britain, things change. This time around, on the 24th of November, when I was inaugurated, within 35 minutes, I had the minister from Theresa May calling on me. And our relations with Britain have improved tremendously, and they were now talking. So America is left out in the cold by the British and the EU. But I'm happy that also in Germany, there's a lady. She has sent a minister, Germany, to come and again resuscitate relations between Zimbabwe and Germany. And they were so happy with Germany. The same with, in France, there's a man, but again, it's very good. Oh, I don't know about that one. So, the basic point I'm mentioning is that there is no problem, there is no quarrel between the people of Zimbabwe and the people of America. Historically or currently, there is no quarrel. The quarrel is at the level of administration, where Zidera was put. I will not go into that history. But just now, the signals that are coming from Washington are very positive. I have no doubt that in no time we should be able to reconcile and move forward and cooperate with the United States administration. I have no doubt that Zimbabwe again will be embraced in the community of nations. This is what we are doing, and re-engage with those who are disengaged with us, engage with those who have never engaged with us. This is the policy we are following. And I'm happy that my brother here, when they left Zimbabwe, they had a different view of what is there. So it is most important that perception is very, very critical. It can lead people to believe in things that are not actually correct on the ground. Yes, the lobby here favors the opposition, but the voter on the ground actually look at what is being offered. I've only been in office for 8 months, but I was able to win the elections in Zimbabwe. I had 50.6%. The next highest person had 44%. So in terms of our Commonwealth parliamentary democracy, that difference is enough. In fact, one vote beyond your opponent is enough for you under Commonwealth parliamentary democracy to rule, like Harold Wilson. In 1964, he had only one seat, and he ruled the UK. I have over 300,000 votes in excess. But also, I also have two-thirds majority in parliament. So that issue is not of any concern in my view. We are there. But most importantly, my mantra is peace, peace, unity, unity, and love, and integration in the community of nations. I thank you. I mentioned about the negative media here in Washington. I have my ambassador here. I said my ambassador is doing his best, but global media is stronger than the village media of Zimbabwe. But we will continue, although being so small, we will continue to say we are not what you are saying we are. We really are what we are. And you come and look at us, and you know who we are by looking at us practically. I think.
On that note, thank you, Excellency. Thank you, colleagues. Let me hand over to Dean.
Thank you very much. As a British citizen, I really can't spend too much time apologising for Tony Blair and everything that so we'll move on from that. 22 years now I've been involved in emerging market investing, and if you haven't been to Zimbabwe, I really do strongly recommend it. Out of all the countries that I've travelled to across emerging markets, there's not many that within an hour of landing, I had my luggage, I had my visa, and was drinking a gin and tonic in a very nice hotel right in the centre of town. So definitely worth going to. I think this administration really does understand the challenges ahead of it. I think the administration really understands as well the missteps some of the African countries have made, some of the countries that we've not mentioned as role models in this afternoon's discussion. But what they also understand is really the golden opportunity that they have in front of them right now for a real paradigm shift in what can be achieved, especially with your help in a symbiotic partnership that this administration under His Excellency is looking to forge with the investor base over here in America. So, Your Excellency, Minister and Governor, thank you so much, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending. Thank you.